Okay, thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone's well. So this session is just a kind of introduction and overview of the new Verb Trainer. So Tony is going to take you through all the different functionalities, and there'll be time for some questions at the end. So I'll pass you over to Tony now.
Okay, I'll just share my screen. Is that okay for everybody? Yeah. Good. I just moved over so I can see. Okay, so the Verb Trainer, very simple idea. It's just training your students on different parts of Latin verbs. It's actually based on a program I wrote for classical Greek, but in the process of putting it into Latin, we've had loads more functionality and also progress tracking, which is like the vocabulary trainer we've got that's got tracking with the verbs do as well. So let's go into there are two programs. One is the student view, and then like the vocab trainer, there's a teacher's view of the class progress where you can choose your class and see how your students are doing in different aspects of the trainer. So this is a student program. I should explain, it now says version 2 up at the top, and this is because I've been working on slightly modified, improved functionality, largely making it a bit quicker for this, the class view and so on. If you don't see version 2 at the top, I'd recommend that you do a forced refresh, which means that when you have the page in view, you can, on a Mac, you can do the Shift key and reload the page. On a Windows machine, you can do Control and reload the page, and that forces it to ignore whatever's in your browser cache and you get the latest version. If you do have any problems with that or your students, just drop us an email, we'll run through it. On a mobile or an iPad, you can just pull, with your finger, you can pull the screen down and you'll see a little thing goes around and it'll load the latest version. But anyway, you want to be on version 2, both of the student version of the program and the teacher version. Okay, let's go in. This is the Verb Trainer. Along the top are setup, review, results, progress. They're sort of phases of what you're doing. So you set up in the first place. You can review which words you've got selected and which parts of the verbs, and the results and progress are sort of how you're doing. And then down below, you've got translate, analyze, compose, and so on. And they're different types of question that you can ask yourself based on the words that have been selected. So let's go straight into looking at different verb question types. Down here, below the picture of the fish, we've got set up by chapter, set up manually. Now, if you're a teacher of Soberani or your students are doing Soberani, then you can just do it by Soberani chapter. So you've got the list, you can go down the list. I'm going just in the middle, end of book 1, chapter 16. That will mean that they will only be shown questions which are parts of verbs that you've seen or experienced in the course already. So there's no surprises there. If we look at review, you can see what has been selected by choosing chapter 16. So in terms of the tenses across the top, we've just got the present, the future, imperfect and perfect, only active, no passives yet, indicative, imperative, infinitive, and these are the verbs we've had so far, the 5 paradigm verbs for the conjugations, and some irregular verbs as well, some through to nolo. And you can just click on the different buttons, different tenses and so on. There's no future imperative, fair enough. Infinitive. If we go to the future, we can see we've got it for wako and teneo, but mito, we don't get any part shown because at this point in the course, we haven't got futures of those third and beyond conjugations, only for the vocabo, tenebo, the more regularly formed ones. So that's why those forms won't appear in questions from the third conjugation and beyond at this point in chapter 16. So if we just go into setup and then say, okay, start asking me some translate questions. Translate is a Latin into English. It's a bit like if you're reading a story, you see Wallow It, how are you going to translate that? So she wanted, oops, and then return, get a tick. Tell me more is a bit of help about how you translate things. And also, because we're doing inflected forms of English, wanted and sent and so on, we've just got a limited number of glosses for the words. So although audio can mean listen, we just expect them to type in parts of here, because it's not an exercise for translation, for actually knowing the words. It's just sort of, can you form the right form of the English to correspond with the Latin? And then it tells you also, you can say you for both singular and plural. You can use abbreviations like I'm and he's. In fact, when we go to you plural, we were asked by some American teachers saying, we say you all for second person plural, which is very precise, very accurate. It's not used a lot in Oxford here, but it's we allow that. That's a reasonable response to that. And as we saw here, you don't have to write he, you can write she or it. So what we're expecting here are just forms which make good sense in English. Tell me more and it goes. Do one more like that. It's simple as that. What's interesting for the students to know when we get on to things like participles is that in nearly all cases, you're just going to translate it as the ing form. It might be dative, plural, feminine, but we're not interested in that. We're saying, you see this in a bit of Latin, how would you translate it? So that's a very specific kind of exercise. Now, if we go on to the analyze, this is very different. This is much more formal. It's sort of like, can you parse the word? And it's asking you to choose the right tense, the right voice, and the right mood. We don't, well, it does use those words there. Some teachers might not want to get their students doing this because they may not have talked about moods and voices and things like that. But quite a lot of teachers do, and quite a lot of teachers like this kind of formal, very precise. You know, you could say with a translate, well, how do I know they really know it's subjunctive or whatever? Well, you don't, because they haven't, not expecting to put a subjunctive in brackets afterwards. But here you actually do have to say what it was, what it is. So we're going to say here imperfect, active, indicative, second, plural. And you get a tick, and the answer you got goes green to show it's right. Let's get one wrong now. Tenere. Or if I thought it was second person, present, active, imperative or something. It says no, it wasn't. That's what it looks like in the imperative bit, but actually you have to click on what you could have chosen down at the bottom there, and it moves you to the right page for that. Or you can go back to the one you had before. Sometimes you'll find there are actually quite a few options of what you could have, like vocatis. We're not expecting to get the lengths right and things. So it could be vocatis, could be a past participle, or it could be you are calling. So you'll find that you get a list of things down at the bottom with the right one or what you typed, either marked right or wrong, and then a list of other possibilities. Moving on, we've got the compose option. And this is the opposite from the English to Latin. This is Latin in English. This is English into Latin, not Latin into English. So you're told you plural hear or are hearing. You use the word audio. You're told which verb to use, and then you get a very precise formal parsing of it. So auditus. Get a tick. We'll try one. Well, let's get it wrong then. So and it gives you what you could have got. The person's type of question is just a very quick one. It's only focusing on one aspect, but you probably know yourselves that getting the right person is quite a big deal for students, and it's quite nice if they can just focus on that and move on very quickly. So you click it, gives you a mark, delays a short while, and then you just move through them very quickly. If you get it wrong, you get across the tick and a slightly longer delay. Okay, and again, tenses, another single shot type of question. Just tell you what tense it is. So present, perfect, present again. Okay, let's go back up to the top and quickly look at results. And there we get quite a detailed sort of account of how you've done on those questions, whether you've got them right or wrong, what you typed, what you could have typed, and so on. Okay, and then the progress button goes into sort of a breakdown of, oh, let's not go all the way up to chapter 32. Let's go to chapter 16. And these are the questions I did just now, and some other ones I've done beforehand as well. So what happens when the scoring works very simply, that if you get the question right, you get a mark goes up. If you get it wrong, a mark goes down in a range of 0 to 10. So you're sort of trying to get everything up to 10. It's like in the vocabulary trainer. And it won't drop below 0, but so you're in a range of 0 to 10. And the different verb forms are put into different categories. So presents are all put together, because otherwise we'd have just a huge number of different data points, basically. And what we want to get the idea is how are they doing on different aspects of a verb. These are future 1 and 2. This is the wako and tenebo, wakabo and tenebo. Imperfect, perfect, and that distinguishes between the first and fourth, which are more regular, and perfect are the second and third. But then if you've done possum and some, you get questions for that. So you get very detailed information about different aspects of different verbs. And you also get a different set of results for analyze. Let's go back to the regular one. Translate, analyze, and compose, because it's quite possible that some teachers just weren't bothering using the analyze and compose features at all. So we separate out the results. We'll see this in more detail when I go into the class view. But that is largely that. Now, going back to the setup, if we click on setup manually, as I say, most people or students will come in and just use it by chapter. But if you come in, you get a very detailed thing where you can pick out all different aspects of verbs, which verbs you want to have, whether it's deponents or whether you want to have irregulars or not. But you can just close it down into a very small number of. So if you want, you could just do a test on present active indicative of wako and mito, something like that. So if you did a translate question, you get one from mito in the present. So that's quite useful as a kind of very focused way of practicing some particular aspect of a verb. So you might just do infinitives, or you might say you get onto subjunctives. You might want to get lots of subjunctives, not mixed up with indicatives or whatever, for some of the time. And what's useful for you as a teacher is that you can, down at the very, very bottom, it says share settings for. If you set up the ones you want to see in a training session with your students, you can then say share settings for translate, and it copies it to the clipboard, and it actually copies the address of this program with some information attached to it. So if you see at the top here, tons of education, verbs, and then you've got this query S equals, and then a number of letters and numbers. And that means that when you go in here, it loads it. And if we look at the review, it's just those words that we wanted. So it's a way of you setting up a training session for your students, and then you can email or whatever, homework messaging system that you've got in use, and you just, that URL that's on your clipboard, you can just paste it in there. And so you can give your students very precise instructions about what you want them to work on. It doesn't prevent them, when they've come in here, saying, oh, I want to do these ones as well. I mean, it's just a kind of starter, but it's quite a useful way of getting focused on particular aspects of things. And as I say, you can do it so you come into the compose program. So if we go, sorry, if we here do compose, and then we go back here and type that in, you come into a compose type question. So it's giving very precise instructions to the program, what to show, what kind of questions to ask. Okay, I think I'll go on to the class viewer now. I mean, we can talk, if people got questions, you can ask me later. When you go in, it's very like with the vocabulary trainer. As a teacher, you've had to sign in, you've gone to the manage page and then picked view verb trainer, and it loads my data. And I pick a class and say view. And there it picks up all the data for my class. Again, if I go just to the first 16 chapters, it cuts it down big time. And then we've got different sets of results for analyze and compose, and for different groups of verbs, summon, possum, or nollo, or you can just see the prep tenses and persons results. It is interesting how the number of parts builds up. So at the end of book one, we really haven't got very many parts, but if you go on to the end of book two, there's a huge number, because we've got subjunctives, we've come in, we've got deponents, we've got passives, and well, the whole conspectus. So you'll find for a long time there's not a huge amount of data, but that's good, because you can get a very good focus on what your students need to practice in future. There is a feature that I haven't got active here at the moment, but it means that if, say here, imperfect 0, if they've got a very poor score, there will in the future version be a little link button there, which will say, for these regular verbs in imperfects, show me a set of test pages just focused on that particular aspect of the verb. And we'll have things like sorting words or auto-graded translations and things specific to that particular class of verb information, which I think will be quite useful, because when someone's struggling with something, you want to be able to say, well, look, just spend half an hour or something on these different questions and see if you can get your results to improve. As you see, there are a lot of, I mean, that's the thing with Latin verbs, a huge number of parts and a lot to master. So it's not like the vocabulary, their competence isn't going to whiz up and they're going to be getting to sort of 50% very quickly on this. But as we say, it's a verb trainer. We just want to help them gradually build up their abilities. And that's why being able to use the manual input to limit what they see is quite useful, rather than just saying, well, just do everything you've met up to chapter 16, you know. Often they need a little bit more focus. And then the download button at the top here, download results. On a page-by-page basis, you can download the results a bit like the vocabulary trainer, and it's a spreadsheet. Basically, you can get your students and how they're doing in these different parts. I think I'll stop there and we can have some questions, because we wanted this to be a brief session to sort of introduce this to people, and also to find out if there are things that people want to know about. So we can invite any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a really useful overview. I think when Tony first showed it to us, we laughed that it looked a bit like a fruit salad, all the different marks, because I think it can be a little overwhelming, all the different colors. So I think it's useful to just go through it slowly.
Yeah.
And this will be recorded, so you can always, you know, watch it again, or even share it with students if they want to have an overview. Cornelia's asked if we could share an explanation of updating the Verb Trainer to version 2. So yeah, we can put something together about doing the forced refresh. I think that would be useful. Yeah. And that is for any of the programs, and also just the chapter pages for getting the printable resources. Using the forced refresh will make sure you always get just the latest version. So we can share that.
Yes, I was going to say, I've actually put something into here so that once you've got version 2, it should automatically refresh, even if we change version 3 to version 4. So it's telling your browser, forget about what you've got in saved from last time, just go and check on the server, is there a new version? So I'm hoping with that, you'll keep up to date, but you need to get onto version 2 in order to start that rolling. And generally, you don't need to worry too much about it. It will just come up. But if you are not seeing version 2 there, then it's definitely worth. There's some bug fixes and speed improvements and stuff. So worth doing that. But as Hannah said, that's a good idea. We'll put something online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got one more question from Carla, saying, when do you anticipate the help link for a spot a student is struggling on? So I think that click where you'd go off to asserting words.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be a progressive thing, because developing all those little exercises and stuff, each one's not a lot of work, but when we've got, probably 100 different sort of, well, maybe 60 odd pages, it's going to take a bit of time to put all together. But I think we'll start putting them in quite soon. Particularly, we have people helping us to sort of develop.
And I guess we could choose points that we think students might likely stumble at. So, the imperfect tense or something to start with, rather than starting right from the start.
Yeah, that's right, actually, yes.
If anyone else got any more questions, either unmute yourself, feel free to just jump in, or any questions in the chat. I had one thing I wanted just to confirm. So you said that the Verb Trainer kind of disregards macro. So vocatus and vocatis, it wouldn't mind either way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're not expected as a student to type in vocatis or vocatis, and so let me think. I did try it where they were expected to notice the difference, but we just thought that's too hard.
Okay.
So it's just sort of, if you've got a sequence of letters, they're not expected to. It's a bit like accents in Greek, you know, it's sort of, it's another step, another thing to learn. So yeah.
I think that's very fair. Yeah. Has anyone else got any questions? As I said, you're very welcome to send an email with any questions at any point, either after the call or just as the weeks go by. Or if your students have any questions as well as they're going through.
Yeah. And also, if you do spot any bugs where something is just wrong, or you're not sure it's right, just do get in contact with us. You can send an email to contact@handsupeducation.org. And quite often it's just a bug, something I've overlooked, I've got wrong. And once I know about it, I can sometimes fix it in 5 minutes and refresh the website and it's sort of done. But if you don't tell me and I don't spot it myself, then it's going to be there and annoying. So yeah, I do encourage you to keep in touch. And if you've got ideas, you've used it for a bit and you think, oh, hang on, it'd be much better if something or other, we're very open to listening. And it's a community project, this, and it's sort of, I do the programming, but I'm led by people who teach and people who are seeing the students all the time. So yeah, please let us know of any suggestions, and not just for this particular program. If there are other programs you'd like to see, or maybe you've seen for other languages or something, you think, oh, it'd be great if we had one of those, then let me know.
Yeah, I think we have had some requests for, a pronoun trainer, and I think there's other things which are on the list already. So
yeah,
watch this
yeah,
space.
surely. I mean, we started with the verbs because they are the biggest and the hardest, but it's also useful to do a similar thing for nouns, pronouns, and so on. So they'll be coming adjectives.
Yeah.
And it should be easier because the framework's here now, and I just build on that. Okay,
so I think, no more questions. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's really nice to spend a Sunday afternoon with you all. Thanks for giving your time. If you have any questions, get in touch, and this recording will be live soon. So enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a lovely week. And yeah, goodbye from us.
yeah, bye.